There are times where it's great to be able to take multiple pictures with changing settings like the exposure or the focus position or the aperture of the lens. And the G9 offers a bracketing function that can do all of those things plus white balance. Let's go ahead and look in the menu and show you all the different bracketing functions. So we go to the camera's menu. We want to be in the top option, the top tab, and we want to be on page 5 of 5. The option bracketing is defaulted to off. When you select bracketing, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different options. It's important to note that the bottom 2 white balance options will only be available if you have the white balance set a specific way. In this case, we have it set to Kelvin, which means that both white balance options will be available to us. Going to the top option is exposure bracketing. Once we select exposure bracketing, you then go to the More Settings section. Under More Settings, you have the option of changing how many photos you're going to take and what the stops will be in between those photos. In this example, we'll do 5 shots, each shot 1 exposure apart. Once you've done this, you can then choose the sequence. Are they going to start at the middle point and then go negative exposure, positive exposure, negative exposure, positive exposure? Or you can choose to have it start with the lowest exposures, go to the center point, and then go to the positive exposures. That's how I like to do it, so we're going to do negative, 0, positive. And once we've got that, the bottom option is single shot. Do I only want it to do 1 shot at a time? So I'm going to have to hit the button for each exposure change. Or do I want to be able to hold it down and have it do it as a burst? In this example, we do it as a burst. And as you can see on the screen, it just changed from very dark to very bright as it did our shots. Our next function is f-stop bracketing or aperture bracketing. Under the More Settings tab, you can choose how many different images you're going to change. Are you going to take 3 images, 5 images, or are you just going to have this thing change iris or aperture all the way until it's gone from the widest setting to the smallest setting? In this case, we're just going to do 3 for this demonstration. Now that we have it set for our 3 shots, we have pressed the shutter. We just took 3 pictures, each picture with a different f-stop value. The next bracketing function is focus bracketing. Under the settings for focus bracketing, you can choose how granular the focus is going to change. This is important because if you're going to focus stack, you might want very narrow changes in focus so that you have very thin slivers of things that are in focus. Other times, if I'm just doing bracketing because I'm doing a macro shot and I just don't really know what I want to have in focus, you might want it to have much larger changes in focus. So in this case, we're going to go with +10, which would be a very granular change. Image count. How many shots am I going to take? You can do up to 999 choices. I'm not going to make you sit here through 999. We'll just do 5 shots. And then the sequence. Do we start with the closest focus to the furthest focus, or do we start at the center point for focus and then we go further away, closer, further away, closer? In this case, I like to change that to 0 to plus. And now we take our pictures. And now each of those shots has a different focus. The next function for bracketing is white balance. Now we have 2 different types of white balance. The top option will allow us to take 3 pictures with 3 different white balance settings. And we can choose how we change white balance. Do we make a very fine change between amber and blue? Or do we make a very fine change between green and magenta? As we turn the wheel, there'll be a more dramatic difference between those 3 images that are captured. So in this case, we're going to go green to magenta. The middle image will end up being the proper white balance. We then hit set, press the shutter button. Now it's important to note I only took 1 picture. It doesn't actually need to take multiple pictures because it's going to extract just a raw photo and then apply 3 white balances to that image and then create your JPEG and RAW file. So what we do is we go into the camera menu. I apologize. We hit play. Now you can see the 3 different white balances that it captured with just one picture. The last bracket function is white balance in Kelvin. Under more settings, you can choose to have a very fine change in Kelvin at just 100 Kelvin changes up to 500 Kelvin changes. We're going to do 500 Kelvin changes for this. We would normally do this less for creativity. The previous version is for very creative expression of white balance. This is more, I'm not 100% certain which white balance I like the best, but I want it to be very accurate. So I'm going to take and grab 3 images, each of them only about a 500 Kelvin to 100 Kelvin difference. Now that I've done that, I take one picture, play the image back in the menu, and you can see they're much more subtle, the changes in white balance, versus the previous option, which is these very garish differences in white balance. And those are all your bracketing functions.
Panasonic.